Hello everyone and welcome. This is Supersonic Duck here, and today I'm going to be showing you an old school fire deck based around the Blaze of Destruction structure deck set in GOAT format. This type of deck was one of the earlier decks I had earlier on in the time, just around the time that I started playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Originally it was my brother's deck. When I first started playing the game, he was interested in it himself and decided to get the Blaze of Destruction structure deck. However, he lost interest in the game and gave me his cards. And so since then I had a fire deck for quite a number of years, right up until the early XYZ era, which was when I kind of started to play the game at a slightly more advanced level, and I moved on to other kinds of decks and other deck building projects, and this one kind of fell to the wayside a bit. But recently I got back into playing old school Yu-Gi-Oh! And rebuilding nostalgic decks, and looking back at decks that I had kind of always wanted to build or always wanted to complete but never really got the chance to, and this is one of those decks that I wanted to revisit, and I'm really glad that I did. A lot of the cards actually are quite meaningful to me. They have they carry a lot of memories, and yeah, this is a really awesome deck with a load of OG cards in it, like Swords of Revealing Light. More on that later. Firstly, I want to talk a little bit about the actual structure deck itself and the cards that it had in it. There were kind of conflicting strategies in the Blaze of Destruction structure deck. Some of the cards were revolved around using like low level monsters and restricting the ability of high level monsters, level 4 or higher monsters, to do anything. But there were also a load of level 4 and higher monsters in the deck, which kind of meant that some of the cards you played held back other cards that you played, and the deck kind of conflicted with itself a bit. So what I've done in order to stay true to the original deck that I had back in the day in the structure deck, I've built the main deck according to one of the strategies using low level monsters, and then I side deck here into a beatdown strategy. So without further ado, let's get started on the deck profile. First off, I play 3 copies of Raging Flame Sprite and 3 copies of Ultimate Baseball Kid, both of whom are the 2 main boss monsters of the deck and the win condition of the deck. Raging Flame Sprite can attack your opponent directly even if they control monsters on their side of the field. He may only have 100 attack to start off with, but whenever he inflicts battle damage to your opponent, he gains 1000 attack. This is a permanent gain so long as he's on the field, meaning that after a couple turns he can become a real threat to your opponent. Ultimate Baseball Kid is a similar enough effect. He can also gain 1000 attack for every other fire monster you control aside from himself. So if you build him up on the field with a couple other fire monsters, he can become very, very powerful indeed. Ultimate Baseball Kid also has a secondary effect that lets you send another fire monster you control to the graveyard to inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. This is a nice little effect that can be a great way to finish off your opponent's life points at the end of a duel. Now, both of our boss monsters do require a little bit of time to set up, time that can be provided by Level Limit Area B and Gravity Bind, both of which I played 2 copies of, as they were both semi-limited during GOAT format. Level Limit Area B forces all level 4 or higher monsters into defense position, and Gravity Bind stops all level 4 or higher monsters from attacking. Both work very well with Ultimate Baseball Kid and Raging Flame Sprite, since both cards are level 3 monsters and are not at all affected by these cards. In addition to that, I play Swords of Revealing Light, a really awesome OG card that only restricts the opponent's monsters from attacking. Likewise, Wall of Revealing Light also only restricts the opponent's monsters from attacking, but it does come with quite a hefty activation cost. In order to activate it, you have to pay life points in multiples of 1000, but while it's on the field, your opponent's monsters can't attack with monsters that have less attack than the amount of life points that you paid. In order to protect against back row removal that our opponent might have, I play a copy of Fake Trap, which will substitute itself in place of any number of trap cards that would be destroyed. So if your opponent tries to play some spell and trap removal like Heavy Storm, Breaker the Magical Warrior, Mystical Space Typhoon to destroy any of your trap cards, this card will be destroyed in their place. Next up, I play 2 copies of Little Chimera. While this guy's on the field, he powers up all your fire monsters by 500 extra attack points, including himself. And because he's level 2, he can attack even under a Gravity Bind or level limit. I also play 3 copies of UFO Turtle, which helps search out any fire monster in the deck that we might want. And to round off the fire monsters, I also play 3 copies of Solar Flare Dragon. This card has really, really awesome artwork. It's a pyro monster itself, and it also can't be attacked if you control another pyro monster, so getting 2 copies of this guy on the field at the same time will lock your opponent out of attacking either of them. He also has a really awesome effect that lets you inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent's life points during each of your end phases while it's face up on the field. So even though being a level 4 monster, it won't be able to attack with a level limit or gravity bind on the field. It'll still benefit from them being on the field, as he will be protected from being destroyed by battle, and he can still inflict damage to your opponent. Next up, I play a copy of Morphing Jar. Morphing Jar is just a really great card for being able to reset your hand, get yourself back into the game if you're running low on card advantage, and also Exile Force, which helps as an out to certain cards that the deck can be weak against, like Jinzo or Chaos Sorcerer. I also play 2 copies of Noble Mana Crossout as a very important out to flip effect monsters, which unfortunately our opponent's flip effect monsters will benefit off of the protection provided by level limit and gravity bind sometimes. So Noble Mana Crossout is just really great for being able to deal with those. Tribute to the Doomed can also destroy set monsters as well as face-up monsters. And then also Lightning Vortex is really great in this deck, as often with the Floodgates you can trick your opponent into putting up a whole bunch of monsters on their side of the field, then suddenly you reveal your gravity bind, and then next turn you can go ahead and play Lightning Vortex and perhaps really gain a lot of card advantage with this, being able to destroy not just 1 or 2 but perhaps 3 or more of our opponent's monsters. For spell and trap removal, I play Mystical Space Typhoon and 2 copies of Dust Tornado. I don't play Heavy Storm in the main deck because of the fact that we're very reliant on continuous cards, and Heavy Storm kind of is dead in our hand because we obviously don't want to destroy our own continuous spells and traps. Obviously, I play the Goat format staples Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity and Delinquent Duo, as well as Premature Burial and Snatch Steal, and for additional graveyard revival I play a copy of Call of the Haunted, as well as one of the most powerful traps in the game, Mirror Force. And to round off the deck, since this deck is a bit of a burn deck, I also play 2 of the most powerful burn trap cards in the game at this point, Magic Cylinder and Ring of Destruction, both of which are able to potentially be game ending on their own. So that is pretty much it for the main deck. Now onto the side deck. When I'm siding the side deck in, I side in all 15 cards together, and I always make sure to side out Level Limit, Area B and Gravity Bind in particular, since these are the 2 cards that limit all the monsters here in the side deck. To start off in the side deck, I play Infernal Flame Emperor, who was the cover card of the Blaze of Destruction structure deck. When he is tribute summoned, you can just banish any number of fire monsters from your graveyard and destroy that many spells and traps on the field. Really great for being able to clear out back row. Unfortunately, he cannot be special summoned, which is a huge bummer, but a lot of these early boss monsters had that kind of restriction back in the day. In order to help summon him out more easily, I play Flame Ruler, who can be treated as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of a fire type monster, and being 1500 attack points, he can be special summoned out from the deck with UFO Turtle. Also in the side deck, I play 2 copies of Thestalos, the Firestorm Monarch. Obviously you can tell that this is the one that I had originally, being the one that's most damaged. And I also play 3 copies of Blazing Inpachi, who is the strongest level 4 fire monster in terms of attack at this point in the game that doesn't have some kind of major drawback, with 1850 attack points. Both Thestalos and Blazing Inpachi can be special summoned from the hand if the thing in the crater is destroyed by battle or card effect. I also play 2 copies of Inferno, who can special summon himself from the hand by banishing a fire monster in the graveyard, and when he destroys an opponent's monster by battle, he burns your opponent for a whopping 1500 points of damage. Molten Destruction powers up all of fire monsters on the field by 500 extra attack points, making a lot of your monsters into really threatening cards, working really well with Inferno, and Blazing Inpachi being a 2350 normal summonable beater. And also, since this is a beatdown that I'm siding into, I play Heavy Storm to be able to deal with our opponent's back row as well. So guys, that has been my Blaze of Destruction Goat format deck profile. If you enjoyed the video, do consider leaving a like or making a comment in the comment section. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching.